We play games to escape reality, to explore it, and to change it. We play games for enjoyment, to be challenged and surprised, to share experiences, and to practice interactions, to develop our skills, and sometimes our understanding. Role-playing is the dreaming of collective dreams. LARPing is inhabiting those dreams with our physical bodies. We build villages and dragons. We bring submarines alive or turn them into spaceships. We model societies and psychological states. We create safe spaces where the implausible is given tangible form, where complex causality is an aesthetic, where the dangerous can be safely explored. We become other people to learn about ourselves. Games change their players, and by extension, lives, communities, and the world. Making claims like these, I often get the question, isn't this true of all forms of cultural expression? To varying degrees, the answer is yes. Well, okay, people are then bound to ask, why do you persist in calling these LARPs games? When people in the art community look at Nordic LARP, they see happenings. When people in theater look at them, they see improvised plays. Our parents, back in the day, when both the art form and the practitioner were, on average, much younger, they looked at LARP and saw pretend play. These Nordic LARPs of yours are not games. Non-gamers, and occasionally gamers, helpfully tell me, nobody wins. There are no points, no victory conditions. And you always say that a disastrous ending to the story, where everyone fails to reach their goals, can be emotionally and aesthetically satisfying. How is that a game? LARP stands for live action roleplay, and the simple answer to why we call them games is that LARP developed as an offshoot of the so-called pen and paper role-playing. Small groups of people telling stories and facing fictional challenges together around a table. These games had point systems and victory conditions and statistics and dice. And of course, there are very many good LARPs in the world today that look quite a lot like that, except that the players are moving about, acting out their roles, wearing costumes and using props. In Nordic LARP, though, the rules usually aren't as visible on the surface. Well-meaning people tell me that Nordic LARP would benefit from severing our ties to the role-playing tradition, because role-playing is apparently something slightly embarrassing in some quarters. By calling our productions happenings or plays, we would get higher status and more money. What I hear when they say this is, we would like to harvest your resources, your methods, your passions, and your creativity, and are willing to pay you these fine glass pearls in return. Well, thank you, old culture people, for this offer to colonize, but no thank you. As our art forms meet and interact, we shall continue to be your neighbors, not your subjects. LARPs are art, but they cannot be reduced to performances because LARPs are also games. Let's consider another art form. Let's think of still life painting. You walk around the house, you pick up a bunch of fruits, a side of bacon, a quill, and a human skull. Since there's a skull, this house belongs either to an old Dutch master or a young Danish role player. You arrange these items in an attractive fashion on a sideboard. This is called a still life. You could mistake it for groceries, but the selection and composition are intentional. Could mistake it for a meal, but then there's a skull and a quill, so clearly this is some attempted communication. The skull is a reminder of mortality, and the food, of course, also will become that over time because it'll go bad. The quill reminds you perhaps of art and science, ways that we have created to fight decay, fight our own mortality. You can paint a picture of this still life, locking it in time forever. Designing a LARP is similar to creating an artwork of this type in that we intentionally select elements of life and place them in conjunction to each other to suggest certain ideas. We place them in a certain place, like a room or a stretch of forest, and we establish a time frame. Just as the still life will probably be cleaned away once the bacon starts to smell, the LARP is scheduled to end at a specific time. But unlike this still life, the elements of a LARP consist to quite a high degree of subjects rather than objects. Once the setting and situation have been established, and the meaning of the different objects have been agreed upon, and the names and backgrounds and relationships and goals of the characters, the fictional characters, have been established, then the players are set free to act as they will and as they can. Aha, you say. If the situation generates events in an interesting way, this could be considered a happening or performance art. Yes, but LARPs don't have an audience outside of the participants, and they're not designed to produce any physical residue, any objects that could later be considered or sold as art. Well, even so, you may answer, it could still be improv. And of course it kind of is, except that the subject's choices of action isn't really the artwork. What happens isn't the artwork. The art lies in restricting their agency, in framing their choices through game design. Gamers view the world with a hacker mentality. We look at social reality, at everything that isn't governed by natural laws, and we see a rule system. Social expectation, plausible outcomes, hierarchies, goals, categories of identity such as gender and class, human interactions, all of these can be reduced to statistics, correlations, expectations. We humans live lives of astounding freedom and emotional complexity suspended on a web of legal and social and traditional limitations, just like the rules of a board game, except bigger and infinitely more satisfying to consider. In a LARP, we define a space, a magic circle, in which all of these rules are negotiable. Indeed, with a little ingenuity and special effects, even natural laws can occasionally be challenged. The artwork, the LARP, isn't really what happens, nor is it the experience of the individual player, exhilarating or life-changing though that may be. The artwork is the game design, the total loss of the fictional universe in which the game represents, as well as the rules of interaction between the players and their characters outside the diegetic or in-game level of the fiction. In other words, the game design is the process of allowing the creation of a painting where the skull is placed perfectly next to the bacon and the light falls just so. Except that the artifact, the LARP, has dimensions in time as well as space, and the bacon and the skull have the power to move about and wills of their own, and the subjective experience of being free to choose their own actions. Being a game designer is claiming godlike power. Being a game designer is painting with rules and with causality to limit the possible choices that the players and their characters can make. Our LARPs are games because they make the rules of reality explicit. In the real world, on one hand, we have the freedom to do whatever we please. On the other, we're not free at all. We are bound by custom and biology and law and expectation to act out our stories in statistically predictable ways. We have point systems in reality and victory conditions, although we compete in many competitions at the same time. And those that we thought were important tend to turn out to have been more distractions from our search for genuine happiness and meaning. In some sense, all games everywhere engage in a conversation with this idea, the limits of free will. But LARPs, being collaborative and built on the ebb and flow of human agency, model this tension with a complexity and a nuance very difficult to achieve on other platforms. Real life is not just one damn thing after another. We are guided, helped, and hemmed in by probability and values and tradition, by rules, by life mechanics. Every LARP is a case study in how these processes work. Like theater and many other art forms, LARPs also contain stories and social interaction and narrative structure and visual representation and symbolic suggestion, but those are really just byproducts of the tools at our disposal. No, what we truly model is the construction of reality itself. Thank you.